Tonight, Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos and his bride-to-be Lauren Sánchez stepping into a water taxi on the Grand Canal.
Hi, Lauren!
Kicking off the first night of their 3-night wedding extravaganza, lapping up the attention after weeks of speculation and rumors about the venues and guest list. But tonight, all smiles.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Famous and Fearless channel. They didn't just throw a wedding, they shut down Venice. Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sánchez turned one of the most iconic cities on earth into their personal playground, filling its canals with celebrities, sealing off historic churches, and turning ancient cloisters into party venues. From Leonardo DiCaprio to Oprah, from the Kardashians to Tom Brady, the guest list read like a billionaire's fantasy football team, but not everyone was celebrating. While Bezos and Sánchez floated in on luxury water taxis, protestors hijacked the moment, launching a giant inflatable Bezos inside an Amazon box and unfurling banners from the Rialto Bridge that read, "If you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more tax." And this wasn't some scrappy little ceremony. This was a $20 million 3-day extravaganza, complete with secret locations, armed security, and controversy at every turn. Even the weather seemed to join the drama, as a sudden thunderstorm rolled in just as the festivities began. So why did one of the world's richest men choose a city sinking under the weight of over-tourism and climate collapse for the most opulent moment of his life? Why did some Venetians praise the chaos while others called it an insult? And is this wedding a love story or a warning sign? Let's unpack the truth behind the spectacle. Because what happened in Venice wasn't just about romance. It was about power, perception, and the price of showing off when the world is watching. It all started with a scandal. Jeff Bezos, then the married CEO of Amazon and the richest man in the world, was caught in a tabloid firestorm in 2019 when his affair with former TV anchor Lauren Sánchez was exposed in lurid detail. Leaked texts, gossip columns, and even allegations of blackmail from the National Enquirer lit up headlines. For a while, it looked like Bezos' carefully cultivated image, the visionary entrepreneur, the space explorer, the modern-day titan, might crack under the pressure. But instead of retreating, he doubled down. Over the next 5 years, Bezos and Sánchez rebranded themselves as a power couple in full control of their public narrative. She became the glamorous, philanthropic partner, flying helicopters, launching charitable ventures, and fronting his space tourism company Blue Origin. He morphed into something more than just the Amazon founder, a symbol of ultra wealth, moving from Seattle minimalism to Mediterranean maximalism. So when news broke that they were getting married, no one expected a backyard ceremony. Venice was the ultimate statement, a city that's beautiful, romantic, and literally sinking, just like the boundaries between public space and private power. Bezos wasn't just getting married, he was staging a cinematic spectacle where every canal, cloister, and cobblestone whispered, "This is how the 0.001% celebrates." But not everyone was impressed, because while Bezos and Sánchez soaked in the spotlight, something was stirring beneath the surface. And it wasn't just the waves. For most people, a wedding is one night. For Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sánchez, it was a global event, stretched across 3 opulent days, spread across some of the most exclusive corners of Venice. The celebration kicked off with a candlelit welcome party at the secluded cloisters behind Madonna dell'Orto, a 15th century church tucked away from the usual tourist traps. Locals say it's one of the quietest, most intimate parts of the city. But for one weekend, it was overrun with event planners, private security, and red carpet staff. Riding in on a water taxi with beaming photographers in tow, Sánchez and Bezos looked more like Hollywood royalty than Silicon Valley titans. And that made sense, because their guest list was packed with actual royalty, at least of the celebrity kind. Bill Gates was spotted stepping onto a canal dock. Leonardo DiCaprio arrived with his signature low profile. Tom Brady was there, so were the Kardashians. Oprah Winfrey and Gayle King glided into their own water taxi, sharing space with Orlando Bloom. Even Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner made an appearance. The Wall Street Journal later reported that former President Donald Trump was invited but didn't attend due to scheduling conflicts. But it wasn't just the stars that got people talking, it was the sheer scale of the logistics. Entire canals were monitored, historic venues were shut down, down. The airspace above Venice was carefully managed. At any given moment, there were helicopters circling, drones scanning rooftops, and paparazzi circling in speedboats trying to get the shot. And while the guests toasted champagne under Gothic arches and glittering chandeliers, someone else was planning a different kind of spectacle, one that would crash the party and make headlines of its own. Just as Bezos and Sánchez were soaking in applause from their VIP entourage, another group was preparing a very different kind of entrance. And they weren't on the guest list. Venetian activists, long frustrated with the city's growing wealth gap and Disneyfication, saw the billionaire wedding as a golden opportunity to make noise, and they didn't hold back. First came the signs, bold, furious messages hung from the iconic Rialto Bridge and plastered in St. Mark's Square. One read, "If you can rent Venice for your wedding, you can pay more taxes today." Another banner simply stated, "The 1% ruins the world." But it was what floated down the Grand Canal that stole the show. A giant inflatable Jeff Bezos stuffed inside a replica Amazon shipping box, drifting eerily past gondolas and wedding yachts. Tourists gasped, locals clapped, photographers swarmed. The protestors didn't storm the wedding. They didn't need to. They hijacked the narrative. In a single moment, the most exclusive wedding on earth collided with the raw frustration of a city drowning under the weight of luxury tourism and billionaire entitlement. And their message was clear: Venice isn't for sale. One protest organizer later told reporters, "If billionaires want to use our city like a movie set, they better expect an audience." But what's fascinating is that not all Venetians were angry. In fact, some were genuinely excited about the event and the money it brought in. While activists made headlines with their signs and symbolism, a different sentiment was quietly growing among residents tucked away in Venice's less glamorous neighborhoods. Gratitude. Bezos didn't just show up to party, he came bearing gifts. Ahead of the wedding, the billionaire reportedly donated nearly $3 million to 3 key Venetian institutions. The funds were split between a lagoon ecology research group, the UNESCO local office, and the Venice International University. All organizations struggling to preserve the delicate environment and heritage of the city. For some residents, this wasn't just a wedding, it was an investment. One mother and daughter, interviewed near the Arsenale neighborhood, couldn't hide their excitement. "She's very happy," the daughter said, gesturing to her mom, "because Jeff Bezos donate like $2 million here, so Venice can do a lot of work." In a city used to being overrun by cruise ships and budget tourists, the idea of a billionaire pouring millions into local preservation efforts, even if it came with paparazzi and protest, was a breath of fresh air for some. Restaurants were booked out, water taxis were busy for days, dozens of local vendors, decorators, and event staff landed once-in-a-lifetime contracts. For many small business owners, this wasn't disruption, it was a godsend. But here's the catch: was it generosity or strategic image control? Because while Bezos was handing out donations and waving from boats, critics say there was a much bigger story at play, one involving corporate damage control, reputation repair, and the billionaire playbook perfected over years. To the outside world, it looked like love on display, but behind the champagne toasts and cathedral views, some saw something else: a masterclass in billionaire branding. Because Jeff Bezos didn't just donate to Venice, he invested in the optics. In recent years, Bezos has come under fire for everything from Amazon's brutal warehouse conditions to accusations of union busting and corporate tax avoidance. His personal wealth ballooned during the pandemic while many workers risked their lives for minimum wage, and even his space ventures were mocked for being out of touch. So when he pledged millions to historic Venice institutions just days before his wedding, many saw it as strategic reputation repair. This isn't new, it's part of a growing trend among billionaires. Use high-profile moments to stage philanthrocapitalist gestures that double as PR stunts. Zuckerberg did it with ancient Rome. Elon Musk made pledges to the UN, then ghosted them. And now Bezos was doing it, with boats, banners, and a bride. But here's what makes this move so effective. By blending romance with restoration, Bezos shifted the conversation. Protesters were loud, but headlines still focused on the glamour. The average viewer didn't see a protest. They saw George Clooney on a canal and a billionaire giving back. It's reputation laundering wrapped in gold leaf. And while critics saw through it, the real twist came from city officials themselves, who barely blinked at the protest and practically welcomed the chaos. To understand why Bezos' wedding stirred such a reaction, you have to understand what Venice has become. This isn't just a city, it's a battleground. For decades, Venetians have watched their home transform from a living, breathing community into something closer to a luxury showroom. Cruise ships tower over ancient rooftops. Apartment prices have soared beyond what locals can afford. And with fewer than 50,000 full-time residents left, the city is losing more than just its buildings. It's losing its soul. To many, the Bezos-Sánchez wedding was the ultimate symbol of that transformation. Here was a man worth over $200 billion shutting down canals, reserving churches, and flying in celebrities, while locals watched from the sidelines, or worse, got priced out of their own city. And yet, Venice's deputy mayor wasn't rattled. In fact, he brushed off the backlash, saying the city was more than capable of handling events even more complicated than this wedding. He compared the Bezos celebration to past visits from the Pope, the G20 summit, and international dignitaries. In his eyes, this was just another high-profile moment on a long list of global spectacles. But here's the thing, and protests didn't erupt for the Pope. They didn't unfurl giant banners when the G7 came to town. This time was different, because this wasn't about diplomacy or faith or policy. This was about a billionaire renting Venice like a movie set and making the rest of the world feel like unpaid extras. And just when the tension reached its peak, the weather made its own entrance. As the guests took their seats and the ceremony began under the Venetian sky, something unexpected happened. Thunder rolled in, dark clouds gathered over the lagoon, the wind picked up, then came the downpour, a sudden cinematic thunderstorm that felt almost scripted. Paparazzi scrambled for cover, guests ducked under umbrellas, and somewhere behind the cloisters, the bride and groom smiled through it all. It was the kind of moment money can't buy, but might just attract. No interruptions, no cancellations, just a sudden shift in atmosphere. Like the city itself wanted to add one final note to the story. Romantic? Maybe. Ominous? Definitely. And yet Bezos and Sánchez didn't seem fazed. They danced. They toasted. They posed for photographers in the rain like it was all part of the plan. And maybe it was, because this wedding wasn't just about two people saying, "I do." It was a full-scale performance. From the banners and the protests, to the guests and the thunderstorm, the whole weekend played like a scene from a prestige HBO series. Part Succession, part White Lotus, with just enough real-world tension to keep the audience guessing. But the message in the end was clear. Venice may be fragile, the world may be watching, but when you have a yacht, a billion-dollar brand, and the Pope's former security team, the show goes on. Jeff Bezos didn't just get married, he made a statement. By choosing Venice, a city both iconic and endangered, he turned a personal milestone into a global headline. And while he smiled for cameras and sailed past centuries-old palazzos, activists reminded the world that even the most romantic settings aren't immune to protest. Yes, Bezos donated millions. Yes, local businesses got a boost. Yes, the photos were stunning. But for many, that wasn't the point. Because when one man can rent a city's most sacred spaces while critics float his caricature down a canal, you're no longer just watching a wedding, you're watching a shift. One where the world's richest play dress up with history while the rest of us try to keep up. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just who wore what or which celebrities showed up, but what it means when private power takes over public beauty, and the price we all pay when spectacle replaces substance. So, was this a fairy tale? A PR move? A cultural flashpoint? That's up to you, but one thing's certain, Venice will remember this wedding, not for the vows, but for the storm it stirred far beyond the altar.